The iron lock on the coffin caught the morning light like a warning. It was the kind of detail that made people stop talking mid-sentence, the kind that turned a funeral into something else entirely, something stranger, something that would haunt the town of Harrow Springs for exactly 40 days. Evelyn Mercer stood at the edge of the grave, her black dress absorbing the thin Montana sunlight of early January 1888. Around her, 47 townspeople had gathered, their breath forming small clouds in the frozen air. They had come to bury Elias Mercer, the town accountant, a quiet man who kept other people's numbers straight and his own life orderly. But the coffin before them was locked with a heavy iron padlock, hand-forged, its surface already beginning to gather frost. Father Benedict cleared his throat. He was a young priest, barely 30, and this was the first locked coffin he had ever seen in his short career. His prayer book trembled slightly in his hands. "Mrs. Mercer," he said, his voice careful, "do you have the key?" Evelyn shook her head. The movement was small, economical. She had not cried since the doctor pronounced Eli dead 3 days ago. She had not screamed or fainted or done any of the things widows were expected to do. She had simply moved through the rituals with the precision of someone following a recipe she did not fully understand. A rustle moved through the crowd. Whispers started like wind through dry grass. What kind of man locks his own coffin? What is he hiding? What did he not want anyone to see? Harold Finch stepped forward from the back of the gathering. He was 65 years old, the town's only lawyer, a man whose honesty was so legendary it had made him poor. He carried a small envelope, red wax seal intact, and approached Evelyn with the careful steps of someone crossing ice. "Mrs. Mercer," he said quietly, "your husband left this with me 6 months ago. He was very specific about when it should be given to you." He placed the envelope in her gloved hands. The wax seal bore the imprint of a key. Evelyn broke it open. Inked was a single iron key on a silver chain, and a card written in Eli's precise handwriting. "Do not open until 40 days after burial, February 12, 1888. That was all. No explanation, no comfort, just a date and a command from a dead man. The whispers grew louder. Evelyn looked up from the card to find 47 pairs of eyes watching her. She recognized most of these faces: the butcher who had extended credit when Eli was between jobs, the seamstress who had made her wedding dress 9 years ago, the railroad workers who drank at the saloon where Eli sometimes played poker on Friday nights. Good people, mostly, people who had liked Eli Mercer well enough to stand in the cold and watch him be buried. Now they were watching her with something that was not quite suspicion, but was not quite trust either. She closed her fingers around the key. It was cold even through her gloves. "Lower the coffin," she said. Father Benedict hesitated. "Mrs. Mercer, perhaps we should discuss this. A locked coffin is most unusual, and the church has certain requirements regarding proper burial rites." "Lower the coffin," Evelyn repeated. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the murmuring crowd like a blade through cloth. They lowered it. The ropes creaked. The coffin descended into the frozen earth with the padlock still in place, still catching the light, still keeping whatever secrets Eli had decided to take to his grave, or not take. Or Evelyn was no longer certain what her husband had taken with him and what he had left behind. The first shovel of dirt hit the coffin lid with a sound like a door closing. Evelyn walked home alone. Lily, her 6-year-old daughter, had stayed with Mrs. Chen, the widow who ran the boarding house on Main Street. It was better that way. Better that Lily did not see the locked coffin, did not hear the whispers, did not watch her mother stand dry-eyed while they buried the only father she had ever known. The Mercer house sat at the edge of town, a modest 2-story structure with blue shutters and a porch that needed repair. Eli had always meant to fix that porch. He had meant to do a lot of things. Evelyn let herself in through the front door. The house smelled of the casseroles and pies that neighbors had brought over in the past 3 days. The smell of sympathy. The smell of obligation. She walked past the kitchen, past the sitting room with its cold fireplace, and climbed the stairs to Eli's study. She had not been in this room since the doctor had declared him dead. It looked exactly as Eli had left it. The desk was neat, papers stacked in precise piles, ink bottle capped, pen cleaned and set aside. This was the room of a man who believed in order, who thought that if you kept your columns balanced and your receipts filed, life would make sense. Evelyn sat in his chair. It creaked under her weight, a sound she had heard 1,000 times through the wall of their bedroom as Eli worked late into the night. She placed the silver key on the desk blotter and stared at it. 40 days. Why 40 days? She knew the biblical significance. 40 days and 40 nights of rain. 40 years in the desert. 40 days of temptation. It was a number that meant something. A number that marked transformation or trial or the space between death and whatever came after. But Eli had not been a religious man. He had gone to church on Sundays because it was expected, had bowed his head during prayers because it was polite, but Evelyn had never seen him open a Bible of his own accord. He was a man of numbers, not scripture. So why 40 days? The door opened behind her. Evelyn did not turn. She knew the footsteps. Mama? Lily stood in the doorway, still wearing her good dress, the black one they had bought especially for the funeral. Mrs. Chen had done her hair in braids, tied with black ribbons. She looked like a miniature widow, and the sight made something crack in Evelyn's chest. "Come here, sweetheart." Lily crossed the room and climbed into her mother's lap. She was small for 6, delicate-boned like her mother, with dark eyes that seemed to hold more understanding than any child should possess. "Why did they lock Papa's box?" Lily asked. Evelyn wrapped her arms around her daughter. "I don't know yet. Mrs. Chen said people are talking. She said they think Papa did something bad. Your Papa was not a bad man." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Papa told me a secret before he got sick." Evelyn went very still. "What kind of secret?" "He said if you ever needed to find the truth, I should tell you to listen to the bells." "The bells." Evelyn looked out the window toward the center of town. Harrow Springs had 3 bells: the church bell that rang on Sundays and for weddings and funerals, the school bell that called children to lessons, and the railroad bell at the depot that announced arrivals and departures. "Which bells, sweetheart? Did Papa say which ones?" Lily shook her head. "Just the bells. He made me promise to remember." Evelyn held her daughter tighter. Outside, the January sky was turning the color of old pewter. Snow was coming. She could smell it in the air, could feel it in the way the wind had shifted. A knock at the front door interrupted her thoughts. She settled Lily in the chair and went downstairs. Through the frosted glass, she could see Harold Finch's silhouette. She opened the door. "Mr. Finch," she said, "please come in." The old lawyer stepped inside, bringing the cold with him. He removed his hat and held it against his chest, a gesture of respect so ingrained it was nearly unconscious. "Mrs. Mercer, I wanted to return these to you." He held out a small leather folder. "Your husband's personal papers, the deed to the house, your marriage certificate, Lily's birth certificate, and a few other documents." Evelyn took the folder. "Thank you." Finch hesitated. "There is one more thing." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a sealed envelope. "This is the first of 6 letters. Your husband left instructions that you should receive them over the course of the next 40 days. 1 every 7 days. 6 letters. 40 days. Evelyn felt as if she were holding pieces of a puzzle that Eli had scattered deliberately, testing her to see if she could put them back together. "When was I to receive the first one?" she asked. "Today, as soon as the burial was complete." She took the envelope. It was heavy paper, expensive, the kind Eli used for important correspondence. Her name was written on the front in his careful script. "Mr. Finch," she said, "did my husband tell you what these letters contain?" "No, ma'am. He only said they would explain everything." After the lawyer left, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table and opened the first letter. The paper crackled slightly as she unfolded it. Eli's handwriting filled the page, neat and precise as always, but there was something different about it, a slight tremor in some of the letters, as if his hand had not been entirely steady. My dearest Evelyn, by the time you read this, I will be 3 days in the ground. I know you are angry about the lock. You should be. You deserve to be angry with me about many things, but I am asking you to trust me one more time, even though I have not always earned that trust. The lockbox contains the truth about our life together, a truth I was too much of a coward to tell you while I still drew breath. Over the next 40 days, you will receive 6 letters from Mr. Finch. Each one will guide you to a piece of the puzzle. Each one will bring you closer to understanding why I did what I did. Your first task is this. Go to the place where we first met. Count 47 steps north from the telegraph pole. Dig 2 feet down. I loved you more than I loved my own soul. That is why I had to lie. Forgive me if you can. Eli. Evelyn read the letter 3 times. With each reading, her hands grew steadier and her breathing grew slower. She was not angry. Not yet. Anger would come later, she suspected, when she knew what she was angry about. For now, she felt only a cold, clear curiosity. She knew exactly where they had first met. The railroad depot. She had been 27 years old, working as a telegraph operator for the Northern Pacific Railway. It was 1879, and she had been good at her job, fast and accurate, able to translate the rapid clicks and pauses into words and numbers with barely a thought. Eli had come to the depot to send a telegram. She remembered him standing at the counter, a young man of 30 with careful eyes and a nervous habit of adjusting his collar. He had written out his message on the form, and she had noticed immediately that it was in code. Not a sophisticated code, but a simple substitution cipher that anyone with experience could spot. She had looked up at him. "This is coded," she had said. He had flushed. "Is that a problem?" "Not for me. But if you are trying to keep something private, you might want to be more subtle." He had smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face. "Could you teach me to be more subtle?" She had. Over the course of 6 months, he had come to the depot twice a week, always with telegrams that needed sending, always with questions about codes and ciphers and the art of hiding information in plain sight. She had thought he was charming in his earnestness. She had thought he was harmless. They had married in the spring of 1881. Lily had been born 14 months later, in the summer of 1882. A premature baby, Eli had told everyone, small and fragile, but fighting to live. Evelyn had been so grateful that her daughter had survived that she had never questioned the timing, never looked too closely at the dates. Now, standing in her kitchen with Eli's letter in her hands, she began to question everything. It was past midnight when Evelyn finally left the house. She had waited until Lily was deeply asleep, had dressed in her oldest work clothes, had taken a lantern and a small folding shovel from the shed behind the house. The town was dark and silent. Even the saloon had closed, its windows blank and empty. The railroad depot sat at the western edge of Harrow Springs, a long, low building with a peaked roof and a platform that ran the length of the tracks. The telegraph pole stood 20 feet from the main entrance, exactly where it had stood 9 years ago when Evelyn had worked here. She set the lantern down at the base of the pole and counted 47 steps north. The number meant something. She was certain of that. Eli never chose numbers randomly. 47 was specific, deliberate, important. She began to dig. The ground was frozen on top, but once she broke through the surface crust, the soil underneath was softer. Her breath came in clouds. Her hands ached inside her gloves. But she kept digging, 2 feet down, exactly as Eli had instructed. The shovel hit metal with a soft clank. Evelyn set the tool aside and knelt in the dirt. She reached down and felt the edges of a tin box about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in oilcloth to keep out the moisture. She pulled it free and carried it back to the circle of lantern light. The oilcloth was tied with twine, knotted in Eli's particular way, a sailor's knot he had learned as a boy growing up near the coast. She untied it carefully and lifted the lid of the tin box. Inside was a single document, a birth certificate. Evelyn held it up to the lantern light. The paper was official, stamped and signed by the county clerk. Date of birth, January 14th, 1882. Place of birth, Harrow Springs, Montana. Name of child, Lily Rose. But the mother's name was not Evelyn Mercer. It was Sarah Coulter. Evelyn read the name 3 times. Sarah Coulter. She had never heard it before. She was certain of that. She would have remembered. A woman did not forget the name of another woman who had given birth to her child. Except Lily was not her child. Not by blood. Not by birth. This paper made that clear. This paper that had been hidden in the frozen ground for 6 years, waiting for Eli to die, waiting for Evelyn to dig it up and discover that the daughter she had raised and loved and rocked to sleep 1,000 nights was someone else's child. At the bottom of the page, there was a handwritten note in Eli's careful script. Lily is not ours by blood. She is ours by love. Sarah died, giving birth. I told you the baby was premature because I did not know how to tell you the truth. Forgive me. Finish what I started. Evelyn sat in the dirt beside the railroad tracks, holding a stranger's birth certificate, and felt the first crack appear in the foundation of her life. Not grief, not yet, but the beginning of it. The sense that everything she had believed about her family, her marriage, her daughter, was built on ground that was less solid than she had imagined. She carefully folded the birth certificate and placed it back in the tin box. She refilled the hole, tamping down the dirt, erasing the evidence of her excavation. Then she walked home through the silent town, carrying the box under her arm like a terrible gift. The Harrow Springs Public Library opened at 8 in the morning. Evelyn was waiting on the steps when the librarian, Miss Opal Hendricks, arrived with her keys. "Mrs. Mercer," Miss Hendricks said, clearly surprised. "I did not expect to see you so soon after your loss. Should you not be resting?" "I need to see the birth and death records for 1882, Evelyn said. Miss Hendricks hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, follow me." The records were kept in a back room, large, leather-bound ledgers organized by year. Evelyn found 1882 and opened it to January. She ran her finger down the entries until she found what she was looking for. January 14th, 1882, Sarah Coulter, age 19, cause of death, childbirth complications. There was an address listed, Silver Bend Boarding House. Evelyn knew that name. Everyone in Harrow Springs knew it, though respectable people did not speak of it directly. Silver Bend was where the soiled doves lived, the women who sold themselves to miners and railroad workers and traveling salesmen. But the boarding house had closed 5 years ago. The building still stood, empty and sagging at the far edge of town, but the women had scattered. Some had married. Some had moved on to other towns, other work. Some had simply disappeared the way women, like that often did, erased from memory and record. Evelyn copied the address into her notebook and left the library. She needed to speak to someone who had been there, who had known Sarah Coulter, who could tell her what Eli had been hiding for 6 years. It took her most of the morning to track down Mabel Hartley. The former proprietress of Silver Bend now ran a respectable boarding house on Main Street, catering to railroad clerks and traveling merchants. She was 58 years old, thick through the middle, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen more than they cared to remember. "Mrs. Hartley," Evelyn said when the woman answered the door, "I need to ask you about someone who lived at Silver Bend in 1882. Mabel's face closed like a fist. "I do not talk about that time, Mrs. Mercer. That part of my life is finished, I understand, but this is important. A girl named Sarah Coulter. She died giving birth in January of 1882. Something shifted in Mabel's expression. Not quite recognition, but not quite denial either. "Come inside," she said finally. They sat in Mabel's tidy kitchen. The older woman poured coffee into 2 chipped cups and settled herself across from Evelyn. "Sarah Coulter," Mabel said slowly. "I remember her. She was not like the other girls. She did not choose that life." "What do you mean?" "Sarah was not like the other girls. She did not choose that life. Sarah was the daughter of a rich man, very rich, but he would not claim her because her mother was Mexican, a housemaid he had taken advantage of. The mother died when Sarah was 12, and the father turned his back. Sarah ended up at Silver Bend because she had nowhere else to go. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. Who was the father? Mabel looked at her steadily. Rex Calder. The name landed like a stone in still water. Rex Calder owned half of Harrow Springs and most of the land around it. He was 61 years old now, white-haired and respected, a man who sat on the town council and donated generously to the church. He was also, Evelyn knew, a man who got what he wanted and removed obstacles that stood in his way. Sarah was his daughter, Evelyn said. Her voice was flat, processing the information. Yes, and when she became pregnant in 1881, Rex wanted her killed. He could not afford the scandal of his bastard daughter bearing a bastard child. But she was not killed. No, your husband saved her. Eli came to Silver Bend in early January when Sarah was 8.5 months along. He paid her debts to me, gave me extra to keep quiet, and took her to a small house on the edge of town. He hired a midwife to attend the birth. But something went wrong just days later. Sarah bled out before the midwife could stop it. The baby survived. Sarah did not. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She set her coffee cup down before she spilled it. Did Eli tell you what he planned to do with the child? He said he would raise her as his own. He said his wife, you, would love her. And he was right, was he not? You did love her. Yes, Evelyn whispered. I did. I do. Then Eli gave that child the greatest gift he could, a mother who chose her. Evelyn walked home slowly, her mind working through the implications. Eli had saved Sarah from being murdered by Rex Calder. He had taken in the child. He had lied to Evelyn for 6 years, letting her believe Lily was their biological daughter, born prematurely. But why had he done it? Out of guilt? Out of compassion? Or had there been another reason? She was halfway home when she saw Rosa Valdez standing on the corner of Main and 3rd, clearly waiting for her. Rosa was 34 years old, dark-haired and striking, the housekeeper at the Calder mansion. She had worked for Rex Calder for 11 years, and in all that time, Evelyn had never seen her smile. "Mrs. Mercer," Rosa said quietly, "I heard you have been asking questions about Sarah Coulter. News travels fast. In this town, yes." Rosa glanced around, making sure no one was within earshot. "You should stop asking questions." "Why?" "Because Rex Calder does not like people digging into his past. And because I need to tell you something, but not here. Meet me at the old mill house tonight, after dark." Evelyn studied her. "Why would you help me?" Rosa's dark eyes were unreadable. "Because Sarah was my half-sister. Same mother. The woman Rex raped and discarded. I was born first, in 1854. I have been waiting 13 years for someone to ask the right questions. You are finally asking them." Before Evelyn could respond, Rosa turned and walked away, her black skirts swishing against the frozen boardwalk. That evening, Evelyn put Lily to bed early and told her a story about a princess who lived in a tower made of bells. Lily fell asleep before the story ended. Her small hand curled around the edge of her blanket. Evelyn stood looking down at her daughter for a long moment. Not her biological daughter, but her daughter nonetheless. The child she had raised and loved and would protect with every breath left in her body. She kissed Lily's forehead and left. The old mill house sat 2 miles outside of town, abandoned for a decade, its water wheel broken and still. Evelyn approached it carefully, carrying a lantern and the small pistol that Eli had taught her to shoot years ago. She did not expect trouble, but she was learning that expecting and preparing were 2 different things. Rosa was already inside, waiting in the shadows. She had brought her own lantern. The 2 circles of light met in the middle of the dusty floor. "Thank you for coming," Rosa said. "Tell me about Sarah." Rosa's face softened with grief. Sarah was beautiful, kind. She did not deserve what happened to her. Our mother tried to protect her, but when our mother died, Sarah had no one. She was 12 years old and alone in the world. Rex would not acknowledge her. I was already working as a housemaid, but I could not take her in. I was barely surviving myself. How did she end up at Silver Bend? A man. There is always a man. He promised to marry her, got her pregnant, then disappeared. Sarah had nowhere to turn. Mabel Hartley took her in, but only because Rex paid Mabel to keep Sarah hidden. And when Sarah became pregnant again, Rosa's jaw tightened. Rex wanted her dead. He sent 2 men to do it. But your husband found out somehow. Eli came to Silver Bend the night before the men arrived and took Sarah away. How did Eli know? I told him. Rosa met Evelyn's eyes. I have been Rex Calder's housekeeper for 11 years, but I have never been loyal to him. I watch. I listen. I wait. When I heard Rex ordering Sarah's death, I went to the only honest man I knew in this town, your husband. Evelyn felt something shift in her understanding of Eli. He had not been unfaithful. He had been decent. He had saved a young woman's life and taken responsibility for her child when no one else would. But there was still something missing. The words hung in the cold air of the mill house like a curse. Evelyn felt sick. If what Rosa said was true, then Lily was not just Rex Calder's granddaughter. She was the product of incest, the child of a monstrous act. Can you prove it? Evelyn asked. No. Sarah never told me who the father was. She was too ashamed. But I saw the way Rex looked at her in the months before she became pregnant, and I saw the bruises on her arms. Evelyn's mind was racing. If Lily was Rex's child by his own daughter, then by law, Lily would be Rex's heir, his only blood relative. When Rex died, everything he owned would pass to her, which meant Rex had a reason to want Lily under his control. Rosa, Evelyn said urgently, does Rex know about Lily? Rosa nodded slowly. He has known for 6 years. Your husband made sure of that. Eli sent Rex a letter the day after Sarah died, telling him the child had survived and that Eli would raise her. He told Rex that if anything happened to him, or to you, or to Lily, the truth would come out. He had evidence, documents, proof of Rex's crimes. Where is that evidence now? I do not know, but I think it is in the lockbox, in the coffin, waiting for you to open it in 40 days. Evelyn felt the pieces beginning to come together. Eli had not locked his coffin to hide shame or guilt. He had locked it to protect information. Information that could destroy Rex Calder and save Lily's life. But why wait 40 days? Rosa seemed to read her thoughts. Because Eli knew Rex would come after you, after Lily. He needed to give you time to gather the evidence, to build a case, to prepare. 40 days is enough time to do that. Barely, but enough. Evelyn walked home through the frozen night with her mind spinning. When she arrived, she found Harold Finch sitting on her front porch, looking old and tired. Mrs. Mercer, he said, standing with effort, I apologize for the late hour, but I thought you should have this tonight instead of waiting until morning. He held out an envelope. The second letter. Evelyn took it. Thank you, Mr. Finch. He hesitated. Mrs. Mercer, your husband was a good man. Whatever you discover in the coming weeks, please remember that. After he left, Evelyn went inside and opened the second letter at the kitchen table. Her hands were steady now. She had moved past shock into something harder and clearer. I have kept that promise for 6 years, but now I am dying, and Rex knows it. He has been waiting for this moment, waiting for me to be out of the way so he can claim Lily. Not out of love, out of greed. Lily is his only legal heir. When he dies, everything he owns will pass to her. He wants to control her, to use her, to make sure his empire survives him. I cannot let that happen. Your second task, go to St. Michael's Church. Climb to the bell tower. Behind the third beam from the north wall, there is a tin box. Inside, you will find 47 promissory notes signed by Rex Calder. Each one represents a family he has destroyed, a piece of land he has stolen, a life he has ruined. I have been collecting these for 13 years, since the day I first realized what kind of man Rex truly is. Use them wisely. Use them to destroy him before he destroys you. I am sorry for every lie. I am sorry for every secret. But I am not sorry for saving Sarah. And I am not sorry for loving Lily as my own. Eli Evelyn folded the letter and placed it in her pocket. She climbed the stairs to Lily's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. In the moonlight, the little girl looked peaceful and innocent, and utterly unaware that her entire existence was built on violence and lies and one man's desperate attempt to make something good from something terrible. Tomorrow, Evelyn would climb to the bell tower. Tomorrow she would find the 47 promissory notes. Tomorrow she would begin the work of destroying Rex Calder. But tonight, she would stand here and watch her daughter breathe and remember that love was not defined by blood. It was defined by choice. And she chose Lily. She would always choose Lily. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. In the distance, the church bell rang once, a single note that echoed across the frozen town and faded into silence. Evelyn counted the days in her head. 33 days until she could open the lockbox. 33 days to gather the evidence, to build the case, to prepare for war. She turned away from Lily's room and went downstairs to begin. The bell tower of St. Michael's Church had not been used in over a year. Father Benedict kept the door locked, not out of any particular concern for security, but because the wooden stairs were rotting, and he did not want to be responsible for someone breaking their neck. Evelyn picked the lock at 3 a.m, when even the saloon had gone dark, and the only sound was the wind moving through the bare branches of the cottonwood trees. She climbed carefully, testing each step before putting her full weight on it. The stairs groaned and shifted beneath her feet. Twice she had to skip over boards that had gone soft with decay. The lantern she carried threw wild shadows on the walls, making the narrow stairwell seem even smaller than it was. The bell tower opened up into a circular room with 4 arched windows facing the cardinal directions. The bell itself hung silent in the center, a massive bronze thing cast in Philadelphia 40 years ago and hauled across the country by wagon. Evelyn had heard the story many times, how it had taken 8 oxen to pull it, how the whole town had turned out to watch it being hoisted into place, how its first ring had been to celebrate Montana becoming a territory. Now it hung quiet and dark, waiting for Sunday morning. Evelyn counted the beams. The third one from the north wall was no different from the others, solid oak that had weathered decades of Montana winters. She ran her hands along its surface until she felt a small irregularity, a gap. She pulled, and a section of the beam came away, revealing a hollow space behind it. Inside was a tin box, identical to the one she had dug up beside the railroad tracks. She pulled it out and sat on the floor of the bell tower, her back against the cold stone wall, and opened it. 47 promissory notes, just as Eli had said. Each one written in different handwriting, signed in different inks, dated across a span of 13 years from 1872 to 1885. Evelyn spread them out on the floor and began to read. They told a story, a terrible, methodical story of theft and manipulation and legal fraud. Rex Calder had not simply taken land. He had destroyed families with surgical precision. He would loan money at reasonable rates, then call in the debts early. He would buy mortgages from banks and foreclose immediately. He would purchase land at tax auctions after ensuring the owners never received notice of their unpaid taxes. Each note was a piece of a larger pattern. Each signature was a family broken. Each date was another step in building an empire on other people's ruin. But there was something else in the box. A single sheet of paper, newer than the others, written in a different hand. Evelyn recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Wade Garrison's, the town sheriff. The note was dated 6 months ago. Mr. Mercer, I cannot continue to ignore what I know. Rex Calder has my son. He took Timothy 3 months ago when I began investigating the land frauds. My boy is being held at the Calder Ranch, somewhere in the North Wing. I have tried twice to get him out. Both times I failed. I am trapped. I cannot go to the federal marshals without condemning my son to death. I cannot continue as sheriff knowing I am protecting a monster. You asked me to trust you. I am trying. But every day that passes, every day my boy is in that house, I lose more of myself. Please tell me you have a plan. Please tell me this will end. Wade Garrison. Velen read the note 3 times. Wade Garrison had a son. She had not known that. Wade had been sheriff for 3 years, had always seemed like a solitary man, competent but distant. She had never heard him speak of family. But Rex Calder had known. Rex Calder had found the leverage he needed to control the one man in Harrow Springs who might have stopped him. Evelyn gathered the promissory notes and Wade's letter and placed them carefully back in the tin box. She descended the bell tower stairs even more carefully than she had climbed them, emerged into the cold January night, and locked the church door behind her. She went directly to the sheriff's office. A light was burning in the back room. Wade Garrison was still awake. She knocked once. The light shifted as someone moved inside. The door opened. Wade stood there in shirt sleeves, his gun belt hung on a peg behind him, looking older than his 42 years. "Mrs. Mercer," he said. His voice was rough with exhaustion. "It is 3 in the morning. I know about Timothy." Wade's face went very still. He stepped back, allowing her to enter, and closed the door behind her. The back room of the sheriff's office was small and spare. A cot in one corner, a desk covered in papers, a stove that threw off waves of heat. Wade gestured to the only chair and remained standing, his arms crossed over his chest. "How much do you know?" he asked. "I know Rex Calder has your son. I know you have been trying to free him. I know that is why you have done nothing while Rex has stolen half the county." Wade's jaw tightened. "What else do you know?" "I know my husband was trying to help you. And I know that whatever plan he had, it died with him." Wade turned away and stared at the wall. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice so quiet Evelyn almost missed it, he said, "Timothy is 12 years old. His mother died when he was born. I raised him alone for 9 years. Then, I made the mistake of thinking I could bring down a man like Rex Calder. You were a Pinkerton detective." Wade looked at her sharply. "How do you know that? I have been asking questions." "Rosa Valdez told me you were investigating Rex before you became sheriff. Rosa talks too much. But yes, I was Pinkerton. I was good at it. I thought I could gather enough evidence to put Rex away for the rest of his life. I thought I was being careful. What happened?" Wade sat down on the edge of the cot, his shoulders slumped. "I was not careful enough. Rex found out. He sent men to Denver, where Timothy was living with my sister. They took him in broad daylight right off the street. I got a letter 2 days later, 1 page, very simple. Stop investigating or the boy dies. And you stopped. I did not have a choice." Wade's voice was raw. "He is 12 years old, Mrs. Mercer. He is all I have left in this world." Evelyn set the tin box on the desk between them. "I think I can help you get him back. But I need to know if you are willing to fight." Wade looked at the box, then at her. "What is that?" "Evidence. 47 pieces of evidence that can destroy Rex Calder. My husband spent 13 years collecting them. He was building a case against Rex, the same case you were trying to build. He got further than you did because Rex did not see him as a threat. He was just the town accountant. Harmless, invisible, until he was not." "Until he was not?" Evelyn agreed. "Rex killed him. I am certain of that now. And now Rex thinks he has won. He thinks I am just a grieving widow who will fold up and disappear. He is wrong." Wade stood and opened the tin box. He sorted through the promissory notes with practiced efficiency, his eyes scanning the signatures and dates. When he finished, he looked up at Evelyn with something that might have been hope. "This is good," he said. "This is very good, but it is not enough. These notes prove fraud, but they do not prove murder, and Rex has enough money to buy his way out of fraud charges. We need more. I know. That is why I came to you. You know how investigations work. You know what evidence we need and how to get it." Wade shook his head slowly. "Mrs. Mercer, if we do this, if we go after Rex with everything we have, people will die. Maybe me, maybe you, maybe Timothy if we fail. People are already dying," Evelyn said. "Sarah Coulter died. My husband died. How many others died that we do not even know about? How many families were destroyed? How long are we supposed to wait before we fight back?" Wade studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell me about Sarah Coulter." Evelyn told him everything. About Sarah being Rex's daughter. About the rape. About Lily being the product of incest. About Rosa waiting 11 years for someone to ask the right questions. About Eli saving Sarah and taking in her child and hiding the truth for 6 years until his death. When she finished, Wade was quiet. Then he said, "If Lily is Rex's only blood heir, then she inherits everything when he dies. That gives him a motive to control her, to keep her alive but under his power until she comes of age. Yes, and it gives us leverage. If we can prove what Rex did to Sarah, if we can prove the incest and the rape and the murder, then we can strip him of everything. His land, his money, his power, all of it goes to Lily, and Lily is under my protection." Wade nodded slowly. "You would need more than the promissory notes. You would need testimony from people Rex has hurt. You would need physical evidence of his crimes. And you would need to do all of this without Rex finding out. Because the moment he realizes what you are planning, he will kill you and take Lily. How much time do we have?" Wade walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. "Rex is planning something. I have heard rumors he is meeting with the Northern Pacific Railway in 4 weeks, some kind of major land deal. If that goes through, he will have enough money and political influence to be untouchable. We need to stop him before that meeting." 4 weeks. Evelyn did the calculation in her head. That gave them until February 13th, the day after the lockbox could be opened. Eli had timed this perfectly. He had given her exactly enough time to gather the evidence and build the case before Rex's power became absolute. "I will need your help," she said. "You will have it. But Mrs. Mercer, you need to understand something. When this is over, if we win, I will have to leave Harrow Springs. I will have betrayed Rex, and men like Rex have long memories. I will take Timothy and go somewhere Rex cannot find us. That is acceptable." Wade walked to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out 2 pieces of paper and handed them to Evelyn. The first was a note written in crude block letters. "Sheriff Garrison, new orders from Mr. Calder. If the Mercer widow continues her investigation, exhume the Mercer child's grave. Scatter the remains where she will find them. This will break her. You will supervise personally. Midnight, January 20th, cemetery." Evelyn's hands began to shake. Lily's grave. They wanted to dig up Lily's grave. But there was no Lily buried in the Harrow Springs Cemetery. Lily was alive and safe. The grave was empty, a marker Eli had placed there as part of his larger deception, making Rex believe the child had died along with Sarah. Still, the thought of someone desecrating that grave, that symbol of the daughter they had chosen to protect, made Evelyn feel sick. The second note was in Wade's handwriting. A response: "No. I will not touch that child's grave. I do not care if she is alive or dead. A child's resting place is sacred. This is where I draw the line. Find another way to threaten the widow." Evelyn looked up at Wade. "You refused him." Wade's face was hard. "I have done many things I am ashamed of, Mrs. Mercer. I have looked the other way while Rex destroyed families. I have taken his money. I have protected him when I should have stopped him. But I will not disturb a child's grave. Living or dead, that little girl deserves peace. That was the one thing I told Rex I would never do. And what did he say? He laughed, said I was getting soft, said he would find someone else to do it if I would not. But then your husband died and Rex's attention shifted. He forgot about the grave, started focusing on other ways to control you." Evelyn carefully refolded both notes and handed them back. Thank you for this, for showing me that even in the darkest places, there are still lines people will not cross. Do not thank me yet, Wade said quietly. I should have drawn that line years ago. I should have drawn it the first time Rex asked me to ignore something I knew was wrong. But I did not. And now my son is paying the price for my cowardice. Then let us make sure your son does not pay any longer. Wade held out his hand. Then we have an agreement. Evelyn shook his hand. His grip was firm and calloused and surprisingly gentle. For the first time since Eli's death, she felt like she was not alone in this fight. Over the next 10 days, Evelyn and Wade worked in secret. They began by making a list of the 47 families whose promissory notes Eli had collected. Some of the families had left Montana entirely, scattered to California and Oregon, and as far east as the Dakotas. But many were still in the territory, trying to rebuild their lives after Rex had destroyed them. Evelyn used her old skill as a telegraph operator to send coded messages to families in other towns. She was careful to use different telegraph offices, never sending 2 messages from the same location. She signed the messages with a code name Eli had taught her years ago, Sparrow. It meant someone who watches from the shadows. The responses came slowly at first. Many families were too frightened to respond at all. They had been beaten down by Rex Calder once and did not want to risk his wrath again. But some wrote back. Some said they would testify if there was a real chance of bringing Rex to justice. By January 17th, Evelyn had heard from 23 families. 12 were willing to testify in court. 7 refused out of fear. 4 wanted money before they would agree to come forward. Rosa provided the money. She appeared at Evelyn's door one evening with a small leather bag containing $1,200 in gold coins. She had been saving for 11 years, she said, saving for the day when she could finally make Rex pay for what he had done to her mother and sister. This was that day. Evelyn took the money and sent telegrams to the 4 families who had asked for payment. All 4 agreed to testify. But testimony alone would not be enough. They needed physical evidence. They needed Rex's financial records, his personal correspondence, anything that could prove in court that he had systematically defrauded dozens of families over more than a decade. That meant someone had to get into Rex's study at the Calder mansion. Rosa was the obvious choice. She worked in the house 6 days a week, had access to most of the rooms, knew Rex's schedule and habits. But Rosa was also the most vulnerable. If she was caught stealing documents, Rex would kill her without hesitation. They needed a distraction. Something big enough to pull Rex's attention away from the house, to give Rosa time to search his study and copy whatever records she could find. Wade proposed a solution. There was going to be a town meeting on January 24th to discuss the proposed railway expansion. Rex would be there. He never missed a chance to speak at public meetings, to remind everyone who really controlled Harrow Springs. The meeting would last at least 2 hours, maybe 3 if the discussion became heated. Rosa could search the study during the meeting. Wade would keep Rex occupied by asking pointed questions about the railway deal, stirring up controversy, extending the meeting as long as possible. It was a good plan, but it was also dangerous. If Rex suspected anything, if he came home early, if he had left someone at the house to watch for intruders, Rosa would be caught. Evelyn insisted on going with her. Rosa tried to refuse, but Evelyn was adamant. 2 people could search faster than 1. And if something went wrong, 2 people had a better chance of getting away. On the evening of January 24th, Evelyn dressed in dark clothes and met Rosa behind the Calder mansion. The house was enormous. 3 stories of white-painted wood with columns and balconies, and enough windows to light a small hotel. It sat on a hill overlooking the town, a monument to wealth and power. Rosa led Evelyn through the servants' entrance and up the back stairs to the 2nd floor. Rex's study was at the end of the hall, a large room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive oak desk that dominated the space. Rosa produced a key and unlocked the door. Inside, the study smelled of leather and tobacco and old paper. A fire had been burning in the fireplace earlier, but it had died down to embers. Rosa moved immediately to the desk and began opening drawers. Evelyn went to the bookshelves. Some of the books were genuine, classics and histories that looked well read, but many were hollow shells, decorative spines hiding empty space. She pulled one off the shelf and found a bundle of letters tied with string. She untied the string and began to read. The letters were from judges, politicians, businessmen. They discussed land deals and court rulings and payoffs in language that was carefully coded but unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. Here was a judge promising to rule in Rex's favor on a property dispute. There was a senator agreeing to block legislation that would have limited land speculation. Another letter detailed a payment of $5,000 to ensure a particular verdict. Evelyn's hands shook as she read. This was exactly what they needed. Proof that Rex had corrupted the entire legal system of the territory. Rosa hissed from across the room. "Evelyn, come look at this." Evelyn crossed to the desk. Rosa had opened a locked drawer using a key she had copied months ago. Inside was a leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with columns of numbers in Rex's precise handwriting. "It is an accounting book," Rosa whispered. "Every bribe he has ever paid, every piece of land he has stolen, it is all here." Evelyn flipped through the pages. Rex had been meticulous. He had recorded everything, dates, amounts, names. It was a complete confession, written in his own hand. "We need to copy this," Evelyn said. "There is no time. The town meeting will not last forever. Then we take it. We take the whole ledger." Rosa shook her head. "He will notice it is missing. He will know someone was here." "Let him know," Evelyn said. "Let him know we are coming for him." Before Rosa could respond, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. A man's footsteps. Both women froze. The footsteps stopped outside the study door. A key turned in the lock. The door opened. Rex Calder stood in the doorway. He was 61 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with white hair and a face that would have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He looked at Rosa, then at Evelyn, then at the open ledger on his desk. "Well," he said softly, "this is unexpected." Neither woman moved. Evelyn's mind raced. They were trapped. The only exit was through the door where Rex stood. There were no weapons in the room except a letter opener on the desk, and Rex was bigger and stronger than both of them combined. "Mrs. Mercer," Rex said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "I heard about your recent bereavement. Please accept my condolences. Eli was a good accountant, very thorough, very detail-oriented, perhaps too much so. What did you do to my husband?" Evelyn's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I did what was necessary. Eli was becoming a problem. He knew too much. He was collecting information he had no business collecting, and he was making plans to use that information against me." "So you killed him," Rex smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I never said that. But let us say, hypothetically, that a man like Eli, a man who knew where all the bodies were buried, so to speak, might find himself in a dangerous situation. He might fall ill quite suddenly, and a doctor who owed me certain favors might be persuaded to write a death certificate without asking too many questions. You poisoned him. Again, Mrs. Mercer, you are making accusations you cannot prove." Rex crossed to the fireplace and warmed his hands at the dying embers. "But yes, hypothetically. Poison is quite effective when administered slowly over several weeks. It mimics many natural illnesses. No one suspects anything until it is too late." Evelyn felt a cold fury building in her chest. "You murdered him. You murdered Sarah. How many others have you killed?" Rex turned to face her. "Sarah was an unfortunate accident. I never intended for her to die. I simply needed her to disappear. When she became pregnant the second time, she became a liability. Instead, I let her live, and she repaid me by becoming pregnant and bringing shame to my name." Rosa spoke for the first time. "You are a monster." Rex looked at her with something like amusement. "And you, Rosa, are a traitor. I took you in when you had nothing. I gave you work, a home, a purpose. And this is how you repay me? By stealing from me? By conspiring with this widow to destroy me? I have been waiting 11 years for this moment, Rosa said. 11 years of watching you, listening to you, collecting every piece of information I could find. I know where everybody is buried, Rex. I know every crime you have committed, and now the world is going to know too. Rex's smile faded. You have nothing. Those promissory notes you stole mean nothing without testimony, and no one will testify against me. They are all too frightened. They know what happens to people who cross Rex Calder. They will testify, Evelyn said. 23 families have already agreed, and we have your ledger. We have the letters from the judges and politicians. We have everything we need to destroy you. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed Rex's face. Then it hardened into rage. You think you can threaten me? You think a widow and a housemaid can bring down everything I have built? I own this town. I own the sheriff. I own the judges. I own everyone and everything that matters. You do not own me, Evelyn said quietly, and you do not own my daughter. Lily. Rex's eyes lit up with a terrible hunger. Yes, my granddaughter, my heir, the only thing of value that Sarah ever produced. Where is she, Mrs. Mercer? Somewhere you will never find her. Rex took a step toward her. I will find her. And when I do, I will raise her the way I should have raised Sarah. I will teach her what it means to be a Calder. I will mold her into something useful. You will never touch her, Evelyn said. She felt Rosa shift beside her, felt the other woman's hand slip into her pocket and pull out something small and metallic. Rex lunged forward. Rosa threw the object at the fireplace. It struck the stone hearth and shattered, releasing a cloud of white powder that billowed up and caught fire instantly. The room filled with choking smoke. "Run!" Rosa shouted. Evelyn grabbed the ledger from the desk and ran. Rosa was right behind her. They burst out of the study and down the hallway, Rex's enraged shouts following them. They took the main stairs this time, running down 2 flights and out through the front door. Behind them, Rex appeared at the top of the stairs, his face contorted with fury. He was holding a rifle. He raised it, aimed, fired. The bullet struck the doorframe inches from Evelyn's head. Wood splintered. She did not stop running. She and Rosa sprinted across the lawn and into the darkness beyond the reach of the house's lights. They ran for half a mile before they stopped, both gasping for breath, hearts pounding. Evelyn still clutched the ledger against her chest. "What was that powder you threw?" she asked when she could speak. "Flash powder," Rosa said. "I took it from the photographer's studio. I have been carrying it for weeks, just in case. It saved our lives." Rosa nodded. But now Rex knows. He knows we have the ledger. He knows we are building a case against him. He will come after us with everything he has. "Then we had better finish this quickly," Evelyn said. They made their way back to town through back streets and alleys, avoiding the main roads. When they reached Evelyn's house, they found Wade Garrison waiting on the porch. He had Timothy with him. The boy was thin and pale, with dark circles under his eyes, but he was alive. Wade had broken into the Calder Ranch during the town meeting and found his son locked in a storage room in the north wing. It had not been difficult. Most of Rex's men had been at the meeting as well, leaving only 2 guards at the ranch. Wade had dealt with the guards quietly and efficiently. Now he held his son close, one hand on the boy's shoulder as if afraid to let go. Evelyn looked at the 3 of them. Wade, exhausted but relieved. Timothy, frightened but safe. Rosa, determined and dangerous. "How much time do we have?" Evelyn asked Wade. "Less than you think," he replied. "Rex will send men after us tonight. We need to leave Harrow Springs immediately." "No," Evelyn said. "We finish this. We have the evidence. We have the witnesses. We end this now." "Mrs. Mercer," Wade said carefully, "Rex Calder will kill you if you stay here. He will kill me if I run. He will hunt me for the rest of my life. The only way to be safe is to destroy him completely. And the only way to do that is to use the evidence we have while we still can." Wade studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What do you need?" "I need you to send telegrams to all 23 families. Tell them to come to Harrow Springs. Tell them we are going to expose Rex Calder in 4 days at the railway meeting. Tell them this is their chance for justice. And if they do not come, then we do it ourselves. But they will come. I know they will. Rosa spoke up. I can help. I know 10 other women Rex has hurt, women he raped or assaulted over the years. If they testify together, it will be impossible for anyone to ignore. Contact them, Evelyn said. Tell them the same thing. 4 days from now, we are bringing Rex Calder down. Anyone who wants to be part of that should come to Harrow Springs. Wade hefted his son onto his hip. The boy was too old to be carried, but he did not protest. I will send the telegrams, but Mrs. Mercer, you need to understand. When we do this, when we go public with these accusations, there is no going back. Rex will fight with everything he has. People will die. I know, Evelyn said, but people are already dying, and I am tired of being afraid. She went inside and locked the door behind her. Lily was asleep upstairs, safe for now, watched over by Mrs. Chen, who had agreed to stay the night. Evelyn climbed the stairs and stood in the doorway of her daughter's room, watching the small form beneath the blankets. 4 more days. 4 more days until the railway meeting. 4 more days until she could open the lockbox and see what final piece of evidence Eli had left for her. She pulled the second letter from her pocket and read it again by lamplight. Eli's words, Eli's plan, Eli who had died trying to protect them. She would not let his death be meaningless. She would finish what he started, and she would make Rex Calder pay for every life he had destroyed. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howled, and in the darkness beyond the town, Evelyn knew Rex Calder's men were already searching for her. Let them come, she thought. Let them all come. Because in 4 days the truth would come out, and truth, she had learned, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The morning of February 12th arrived cold and clear, the kind of Montana winter day where the sky stretched blue and endless, and the air felt sharp enough to cut. Evelyn woke before dawn, dressed in black, and walked to the cemetery alone. She carried the silver key that Harold Finch had given her 40 days ago, and she carried the weight of everything she had learned in those 40 days. The grave was covered with a thin layer of new snow. Someone had cleared the headstone. Evelyn suspected it was Rosa, who seemed to appear and disappear like a ghost, always watching, always working toward the same goal from different angles. She knelt beside the grave and brushed away the snow until she found the iron padlock still in place, still keeping its secrets. Her hands shook slightly as she fitted the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click that sounded very loud in the morning silence. She lifted the coffin lid. It was heavy, awkward, but she managed to prop it open against the frozen ground. Indeed, just as Eli had promised in his letters, there was no body. The coffin was empty except for a small wooden box in the center, placed carefully as if on an altar. Evelyn reached in and lifted the box out. It was made of cedar, smooth and fragrant, with brass hinges and a simple latch. She opened it. Inside were 3 things: 2 letters sealed with red wax, and a photograph. The photograph made her breath catch. It showed 4 people: Eli, younger, his hair not yet touched with gray. A young woman with dark hair and frightened eyes who could only be Sarah Coulter. Rosa, looking almost exactly as she did now, her face already marked with the hardness of someone who had seen too much. And holding Sarah's hand, a tiny baby wrapped in white linen. Lily. Evelyn turned the photograph over. On the back, in Eli's handwriting, was a date. January 15th, 1882, the day after Sarah died. Eli had taken this photograph the day he became Lily's father, the day he had made the choice that would define the rest of his life. She set the photograph aside gently and picked up the first letter. The wax seal bore the imprint of a sparrow, her code name. The name Eli had taught her years ago when he was showing her how to send secret messages, back when she thought it was just a game, just a way for a clever man to impress the woman he loved. She broke the seal. Dearest Evelyn, If you are reading this, you have survived the 40 days. You have found the promissory notes. You have gathered the witnesses. You have learned the truth about Lily and Sarah and the kind of monster Rex Calder truly is. I am proud of you, prouder than I can express in words. But there is one more thing you need to know, one final piece of the puzzle that I could not tell you while I lived because it was too dangerous. Because if Rex had suspected for even a moment that you knew this secret, he would have killed you immediately. Rex Calder has a weakness, one thing he values above all else. Not money, not power, not land. Legacy. Rex is dying. He has been dying for 2 years. Cancer. The doctors give him 6 months at most, maybe less. He does not show it because he cannot afford to show weakness, but I have seen his medical records. I know the truth. Everything Rex has done in the last 2 years, every land grab, every murder, every crime, has been in service of one goal. He wants to ensure that his empire survives him. He wants to live forever through his wealth and his name. That is why he wants Lily, not just because she is his heir, but because she is the only person alive who carries his blood. When he dies, she becomes everything he built. She becomes his immortality. But there is a way to destroy that dream, a way to ensure that everything Rex has built crumbles to dust. The Northern Pacific Railway is planning to buy 15,000 acres from Rex on February 13th. The sale will make him wealthy beyond measure and give him political influence that extends far beyond Montana. Once that sale goes through, Rex becomes untouchable. But the railway has one strict requirement. All land titles must be clear and legal. Any hint of fraud or disputed ownership, and they will cancel the deal immediately. They cannot afford to buy land that might be tied up in litigation for years. You have the evidence to prove that dozens of Rex's land titles are fraudulent. You have witnesses who will testify to his crimes. You have his own ledger documenting his bribes and murders. Present this evidence to the railway commissioner before the sale is finalized. Show him that every acre Rex is trying to sell is tainted with blood and lies. The railway will cancel the deal. Rex will be exposed. His empire will collapse, and the cancer will take him before he can rebuild. That is how you destroy a man like Rex Calder, not by killing him, by making sure he dies knowing that everything he worked for has turned to ash. The second letter in this box is for Lily. Give it to her when she is old enough to understand. Tell her about Sarah. Tell her about the choice I made. Tell her that family is built by the choices we make, not the accidents of birth. I have loved you both more than my own life. Forgive me for every lie. Remember me for the one truth that mattered. I chose you. I chose her. I chose us. Eli Evelyn read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and placed it back in the cedar box. She picked up the second letter, the one addressed to Lily in Eli's careful script, and held it for a long moment before placing it beside the first. Not yet. Lily was only 6 years old, too young for this burden, too young for these terrible truths. Someday, when she was older, when she could understand that families were built on choices, not accidents, when she could hear the story of her birth without it destroying her. Evelyn closed the cedar box and stood. Her knees ached from kneeling in the cold. She looked down at the empty coffin, at the space where her husband's body should have been, and felt something shift inside her. Eli had given her everything she needed. Now it was her turn to finish it. But the first letter had said something else, something that made her heart stop and then race forward like a runaway train. Come to the mill house tonight. She read those words again. Not come to my grave, not remember me fondly. Come to the mill house, as if Eli would be there, as if he were waiting. Evelyn stood so quickly the cedar box nearly fell from her lap. Her hands shook as she reread the final lines of the first letter. I have loved you both more than my own life. Forgive me for every lie. Remember me for the one truth that mattered. I chose you. I chose her. I chose us. Those words were written in present tense. I have loved, not I loved, as if the loving were still happening, still present, still alive. She looked down into the empty coffin, truly empty. No body had ever been placed inside, just the cedar box, just the letters, just the truth waiting to be discovered. Eli had not died. He had disappeared. Evelyn's breath came in short gasps. She pressed one hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. 40 days. 40 days of grief and fear and standing alone against Rex Calder. 40 days of believing she was a widow. And Eli had been alive the entire time. Rage and relief crashed over her in equal measure. She wanted to scream. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to find her husband and either embrace him or strangle him, and she was not certain which impulse would win. The mill house, 2 miles outside of town. The same place where she and Rosa had hidden from Rex's men. The same place Lily had been told to run if danger came. Evelyn looked at the sky. It was barely past 11 in the morning. The letter had said tonight. But she could not wait. Could not spend another 7 hours not knowing, not seeing, not demanding answers from the man who had let her grieve for nothing. She closed the coffin lid, left the cemetery at a run, and did not stop until she reached the mill house. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open without knocking. Eli stood by the window, backlit by winter sun streaming through the broken boards. He was thinner than she remembered, his hair longer and touched with more gray. A beard covered his jaw, rough and unkempt. He wore clothes she had never seen before, simple work pants and a shirt that hung loose on his frame, but his eyes were the same. Those careful, watchful eyes that had first drawn her attention 9 years ago at the telegraph depot. He turned when she entered. His mouth opened as if to speak, to explain, to apologize. Evelyn crossed the room in 3 strides and slapped him across the face. The crack of her palm against his cheek echoed in the empty mill house. Eli's head snapped to the side. He did not raise a hand to defend himself, did not step back, just stood there and accepted it. "You let me grieve for 40 days, Evelyn said. Her voice shook with fury she could barely contain. "I stood at your grave. I buried an empty coffin. I told our daughter her father was dead. I know." Eli's voice was quiet, raw. "I am sorry." "Sorry?" The word came out like a whip crack. "You are sorry? Do you have any idea what these 40 days have been like? The fear, the loneliness? Facing Rex Calder alone, wondering every night if he would come for Lily, wondering if I was strong enough to protect her without you?" "You were strong enough." Eli took a careful step toward her, hands loose at his sides, making no move to touch her. "You were stronger than I ever was. That is why I had to do it this way. By lying to me? By making me think you were dead. By making Rex think I was dead. If he had suspected I was alive, he would have used me against you. He would have tortured me to find Lily. He would have held me hostage to force your silence. The only way to keep you both safe was to disappear completely, to become a ghost." Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So you hid here for 40 days while I did everything. While I gathered evidence and faced down his men and stood in his study with a gun pointed at my head. Yes, because I knew you could do it. I knew you were capable of things I never had the courage for. And I was right. You destroyed Rex's empire. You saved our daughter. You did what I could only plan but never execute." Evelyn wanted to hit him again, wanted to scream at him for being a coward, for leaving her alone, for thinking his careful plans and cryptic letters were enough to make up for 40 days of grief. But she was also bone-tired, tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of carrying everything alone. She collapsed against his chest. Eli caught her, his arms wrapping around her carefully, as if she were made of glass and might shatter at any moment. She did not cry. She had no tears left after 40 days of shedding them. She just stood there, breathing in the smell of him, wood smoke and soap and something else that was simply Eli, letting the solid reality of him sink into her bones. "I hate you," she whispered against his shirt. "I know," Eli said softly. "You should. But I also love you. And I do not know what to do with both those things at the same time. You hold them both. You let them both be true. That is what love is, Evelyn. It is messy and contradictory, and it does not fit into neat categories of right or wrong. They stood like that while the winter sun moved across the floor in a slow arc. Outside, a crow called once and fell silent. Neither of them spoke. Words seemed inadequate after 40 days of silence and secrets. Finally, Evelyn pulled back. She looked up at his bearded face, at the lines around his eyes that had not been there before. "What happens now? Now we finish it," Eli said. "The railway meeting is tomorrow. You will present the evidence. Rex will fall. And afterward, when Lily is safe and the families have their land back, we leave Harrow Springs. We go somewhere his ghost cannot follow. Where? I do not know yet. Somewhere with a telegraph office so you can work. Somewhere with a good school for Lily. Somewhere we can start over without the weight of all these lies. Can we? Start over?" Eli touched her face gently, his calloused fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I do not know, but I would like to try, if you will let me." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You are coming with me tomorrow, to the railway meeting. You are going to stand beside me when I face Rex for the last time. No more hiding, no more watching from the shadows. No more hiding," Eli agreed. "Good, because if you ever fake your death again, I will kill you myself." "And that is a promise, not a threat." Eli smiled. It was small and sad and real. "I believe you." The Harrow Springs train depot had never seen a crowd like this. By 10 in the morning on February 13th, 76 people had gathered in and around the small building. 23 families who had lost land to Rex Calder, 10 women who had suffered his violence, Wade Garrison and his son Timothy, Rosa Valdez, Harold Finch, the lawyer, Father Benedict, even Miss Opal Hendricks from the library, who had spent the last week helping Evelyn organize documents and prepare testimonies. They stood in small groups, talking quietly, nervously. Many of them had never met before. Some had traveled hundreds of miles to be here. All of them shared the same haunted look of people who had been beaten down and were now, finally, choosing to stand up. Evelyn moved through the crowd, speaking to each family, thanking them for coming, assuring them that today would matter, that their courage would not be wasted. At 11:15, a locomotive pulled into the station with a screech of brakes and a blast of steam. 3 men descended from the passenger car. Henry Blackwell, the railway commissioner from Helena, 2 lawyers in dark suits carrying leather satchels filled with contracts and deeds, and Rex Calder. He looked exactly as Evelyn had seen him 4 days ago, tall, white-haired, impeccably dressed. But now that she knew what Eli had told her, now that she knew Rex was dying, she could see the signs, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he leaned on his walking stick, the grayness beneath his careful composure. He was dying, and he was desperate. Rex's eyes swept the crowd. When he saw Evelyn standing at the front, the cedar box tucked under her arm, his face went rigid with fury. But he controlled it, smoothed his expression back into aristocratic calm, turned to the railway commissioner and said something that made the man laugh. They walked toward the depot office, Rex's lawyers flanking him, his walking stick tapping against the wooden platform. Evelyn stepped into his path. "Mr. Calder," she said. Her voice carried across the suddenly silent crowd. "I need to speak with Commissioner Blackwell before you finalize this sale." Rex looked at her as if she were something unpleasant he had stepped in. "Mrs. Mercer, I see you have been busy gathering a mob. How democratic of you. But I am afraid the Commissioner has more important matters to attend to than listening to the grievances of malcontents and liars." Commissioner Blackwell frowned. "Mrs. Mercer, is it? I am afraid Mr. Calder is correct. We have a very tight schedule. Perhaps you could make an appointment for later in the week." "This cannot wait," Evelyn said. She opened the cedar box and pulled out the leather ledger Rosa had stolen from Rex's study. "This is Mr. Calder's personal accounting book. It documents every bribe he has paid, every judge he has corrupted, every piece of land he has stolen over the last 13 years, including the 15,000 acres he is attempting to sell to your railway. Blackwell's frown deepened. That is a serious accusation, Mrs. Mercer. I have proof. Evelyn handed him the ledger. Every entry is in Mr. Calder's own handwriting. Every date can be verified. Every name can be checked against court records. Rex's lawyer stepped forward. Commissioner, this is clearly a fabrication created by a disturbed widow seeking attention. I strongly advise you not to waste your time. Then explain this. Evelyn pulled out the bundle of promissory notes. 47 families whose land was taken through fraud. I have their testimonies. They are here today. They are willing to swear under oath that Rex Calder stole everything he owns. Blackwell took the promissory notes with hands that had started to shake slightly. He glanced at Rex. Is this true? Of course not. Rex's voice was cold and controlled. My former accountant, Elias Mercer, was mentally unstable toward the end of his life. He created these forgeries to damage my reputation. His widow has been taken in by his delusions. Evelyn felt a flash of rage so intense it nearly took her breath away. But she kept her voice steady. My husband was not delusional, and he was not murdered. Rex's expression shifted slightly. Confusion flickered across his face. Because he is not dead. A murmur swept through the crowd. Commissioner Blackwell's eyebrows rose. Eli stepped forward from the back of the gathering. He had shaved the beard that morning, cut his hair, dressed in the dark suit he had worn to church every Sunday for 9 years, but there was no mistaking him. Elias Mercer, accountant, husband, father, ghost made flesh. Rex's face went white as winter snow. You, he whispered, you are supposed to be dead. I was, Eli said calmly, for 40 days, long enough to watch my wife destroy everything you built, long enough to see justice finally arrive. This is impossible, Rex's voice cracked. I had the doctor confirm it. I saw the death certificate. You saw what I wanted you to see. Eli moved to stand beside Evelyn. Dr. Morris is an old friend. He was happy to help stage my death in exchange for evidence that would clear his conscience of the other things you had made him do over the years. She turned to the crowd. These people are not liars or malcontents. They are victims, and they deserve to be heard. One by one, people stepped forward. Old Jedediah Moss, 74 years old, who had lost his farm in 1879. Martha Yates, whose husband had died of despair after Rex foreclosed on their ranch. Ben Chen, who had been beaten by Rex's men when he tried to file a complaint with the territorial government. They told their stories, short, brutal, honest. No embellishment, no drama, just the facts of what had been done to them. Commissioner Blackwell listened with a face that grew increasingly troubled. He opened the ledger and began reading. His eyes widened. He flipped pages, read more. His jaw tightened. Finally, he looked up at Rex. Mr. Calder, these are very serious allegations. I need to suspend this sale until a full investigation can be conducted. Rex's composure finally cracked. You cannot do that. We have a contract. We have a conditional contract. Conditional on all titles being clear and legal. Based on what I have seen here today, I have reason to believe that is not the case. This is ridiculous. Rex turned to his lawyers. Tell him this is all nonsense. But the lawyers were reading the ledger now, their faces going pale. One of them whispered something to Rex. Rex shoved him away and turned back to Blackwell. I will not allow this sale to be disrupted by the ravings of a grieving widow and a collection of failures who cannot accept responsibility for their own poor decisions. Rosa stepped forward from the crowd. She had been quiet until now, standing at the edge, watching. But now she moved to stand beside Evelyn. I have something to add, Commissioner, she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. I worked in Mr. Calder's home for 11 years. During that time, I witnessed him commit acts of violence against multiple women. I can provide names, dates, and details. I am also prepared to testify that Mr. Calder murdered his own daughter after raping her. The crowd went utterly silent. Even Rex seemed stunned into momentary stillness. Blackwell's face had gone white. "His daughter?" "Sarah Coulter," Rosa said. "She died in childbirth in January 1882. The child she was carrying was the result of Rex Calder raping her when she was 18 years old. That child is Lily Mercer, the daughter of Mrs. Evelyn Mercer, who took her in and raised her with love and care." Rex found his voice. "This woman is insane. Sarah Coulter was not my daughter. She was nothing to me. She was everything to you," Rosa said. "She was your only child, your only blood heir. And you destroyed her because you could not bear the thought of anyone knowing the truth about what you are. Lies!" Rex's face was flushed now, his control completely gone. "All of this is lies and slander, and I will sue every person here for defamation." Evelyn pulled the photograph from the cedar box, the last piece of evidence. She handed it to Blackwell. "This was taken the day after Sarah Coulter died. That is my husband holding the baby. That is Rosa Valdez standing beside Sarah's body. And that is Sarah herself, Rex Calder's daughter, who died because of what he did to her." Blackwell stared at the photograph for a long moment. Then he looked up at Rex with something close to horror in his eyes. "I am canceling this sale, Mr. Calder, and I am recommending that the Territorial Marshal open an immediate investigation into these allegations." Rex's walking stick clattered to the platform. He swayed slightly. For a moment, Evelyn thought he might collapse, but he steadied himself, gripping the railing of the platform. "You have no idea what you have done," he said to Evelyn. His voice was soft now, almost conversational. "You think you have won. You think you have destroyed me. But I built an empire from nothing. I clawed my way up from dirt and poverty, and I will not let a widow and a housemaid tear it down." "Your empire is already gone," Evelyn said. "Every title you hold is under investigation. Every judge you bribed will turn against you to save themselves. Every piece of land you stole will be returned to its rightful owners. And when you die, which will be soon, according to your own doctors, there will be nothing left. No legacy, no immortality, just the memory of what you truly were. A monster who destroyed everyone he touched." Rex stared at her. Something in his eyes changed. The rage drained away, replaced by a cold calculation that was somehow more frightening. "If I have nothing left to lose," he said quietly, "then I have no reason to show mercy." He pulled a small revolver from his coat pocket. The crowd gasped and scattered. Wade Garrison moved to draw his own weapon, but he was too far away, blocked by too many people. Rex pointed the gun at Evelyn. His hand was steady, despite the disease eating away at him. "You took everything from me," he said. "So I will take everything from you." He pulled the trigger. The shot rang out across the platform. But Evelyn did not fall, could not fall, because Rosa had stepped in front of her, had put herself between the bullet and its intended target. Rosa collapsed. Blood spread across the front of her dress, dark and fast. Evelyn caught her before she hit the ground, lowered her gently, pressed her hands against the wound. "Rosa," she whispered. "Rosa, no." Rosa's eyes were already going glassy. But she smiled, a real smile, the first Evelyn had ever seen on her face. "Sarah is avenged," she whispered. "That is enough." Then her eyes closed. Eli dropped to his knees beside them. He pulled off his coat and pressed it against Rosa's wound, his hands moving with the quick efficiency of someone who had seen injuries before. "Stay with us, Rosa. Stay with us." But Rosa's breathing was already slowing. Her hand found Evelyn's and gripped it weakly. "Tell Lily," she whispered. "Tell her Sarah loved her. Tell her I loved her too. Both sisters, both mothers in different ways." "We will tell her," Evelyn promised. "We will make sure she knows." Rosa's grip loosened. Her eyes closed. And the woman who had waited 11 years for justice, who had given everything to see Rex Calder fall, was gone. Wade Garrison finally reached them, his gun drawn. But Rex had dropped his revolver and was staggering backward, one hand pressed to his chest. The effort of firing the shot, The surge of adrenaline had been too much for his failing body. He fell to his knees on the platform, gasping for breath. The territorial marshal, who had been in the crowd the whole time waiting to see if the evidence warranted an arrest, moved forward with handcuffs. But it was clear Rex Calder would not be going to jail. He would be going to a doctor, and then probably to a grave. Evelyn held Rosa's body and felt the weight of everything that had been lost. Sarah, Eli, and now Rosa, who had waited 11 years for justice and had paid for it with her life. But around her, she could hear the crowd beginning to stir, beginning to speak. Jedediah Moss was crying. Martha Yates was holding her husband's hand. The other 9 women who had come to testify about Rex's violence were embracing each other, their faces showing relief and grief and the beginning of something that might someday become healing. Harold Finch appeared at Evelyn's side. "Let me take care of her," he said gently. "You have done enough." Evelyn let him lift Rosa's body. She stood on shaking legs and looked around at the 76 people who had come here today, who had stood up, who had refused to be silent anymore. Commissioner Blackwell approached her, his face grave. "Mrs. Mercer, I want you to know that the Northern Pacific Railway will be contributing $50,000 to a fund for the families Mr. Calder defrauded. It is the least we can do. We should have investigated his titles more carefully before entering into negotiations." Evelyn nodded. She could not speak. Her throat was too tight. "And Mrs. Mercer," Blackwell continued, "there will be a full investigation into your husband's death. If he was murdered as you claim, the people responsible will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." "Thank you," Evelyn managed to whisper. The crowd began to disperse slowly. Some people went to give their formal statements to the marshal. Others simply wandered away, looking dazed, as if they could not quite believe what had just happened. Wade Garrison stood beside Evelyn, his son pressed against his side. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen," he said quietly. "I am not brave," Evelyn said. "I am just a mother protecting her child." "That is what bravery is," Wade replied. 2 weeks later, Evelyn stood in the cemetery again. This time she was not alone. Lily held her hand on one side. Wade Garrison and Timothy stood on the other. Behind them a crowd of nearly 200 people had gathered. They were burying Rosa Valdez beside Sarah Coulter, the 2 half-sisters, reunited in death. The headstone was simple granite, engraved with both their names and a single line. They chose love over fear. Father Benedict spoke briefly about sacrifice and redemption. Miss Hendricks read a poem. Old Jedediah Moss said a prayer in a voice that cracked with emotion. When the ceremony ended, people came forward to place flowers on the grave. Wildflowers, mostly, gathered from the hillsides around Harrow Springs. Rosa would have liked that, Evelyn thought. She had never been one for cultivated gardens and careful arrangements. She had been wild and dangerous and fiercely loyal to the few people she allowed herself to love. Rex Calder had died 3 days after the confrontation at the depot. His cancer, accelerated by stress and the physical exertion of firing the gun, had finally consumed him. He died alone in his mansion, all his servants having fled, all his power gone. The newspaper obituary was brief and factual. It did not mention his crimes. It did not need to. Everyone in Montana Territory knew what he had been. His estate was in probate. The courts were sorting through the tangled web of fraudulent land titles and stolen property. It would take years, but Harold Finch had assured Evelyn that Lily, as Rex's only legitimate heir, would inherit whatever was left after restitution was made to his victims. Evelyn had not decided yet what to do with that inheritance, but she knew she would not keep it. Blood money had no place in the life she wanted to build for her daughter. After the funeral, Evelyn and Lily walked home together. The March afternoon was warming into something that might eventually become spring. The snow was melting. Water ran in the streets. The whole world felt like it was thawing after a long, terrible winter. "Mama," Lily said as they climbed the steps to their house, "when I am bigger, will you tell me about the lady we buried today?" Yes, sweetheart. When you are bigger, I will tell you everything. Will you tell me about Papa too? I will. I will tell you how he saved a young woman's life, how he chose to be your father even though he did not have to be, how he loved us both more than anything in the world. Lily thought about this for a moment. I am glad he chose us, she said finally. So am I, baby. So am I. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evelyn sat at Eli's desk and opened the cedar box one more time. She took out the second letter, the one addressed to Lily, and held it up to the lamplight. She would keep it safe. When Lily was 16 or 18 or whenever she was ready, Evelyn would give it to her, would let Eli's words speak across the years, explaining the choices he had made and the love that had driven them. But for now, it could wait. For now, there was healing to do, a town to help rebuild, families to support as they reclaimed their stolen land, a daughter to raise with truth and love instead of lies and fear. Evelyn placed the letter back in the box and closed it. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, Wade Garrison was probably tucking Timothy into bed, finally able to be the father he had always wanted to be. Somewhere, the 23 families who had testified were beginning to build new lives on the land that was finally legally theirs. And somewhere, in whatever came after death, Sarah and Rosa and Eli were together, free from pain, free from fear, free from the terrible weight of secrets that had shaped their lives and deaths. Evelyn pressed her hand against the cold window glass. She thought about the woman she had been 40 days ago, the widow who had stood at a locked coffin with no idea what her husband had set in motion. The woman who had been content to be invisible, to fold herself small, to let the world happen around her instead of shaping it herself. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder and stronger and more certain of her own power. Someone who had learned that silence was not safety. That truth, no matter how painful, was better than the most comfortable lie. That a mother's love could be fierce enough to bring down an empire. The lockbox was empty now, all its secrets revealed, all its mysteries solved. But Evelyn's life was full of purpose and possibility and the hard, good work of building something better from the ruins of what had been destroyed. She turned away from the window and climbed the stairs to check on Lily one more time before bed. Her daughter slept peacefully, one small hand curled beneath her cheek, her dark hair spread across the pillow like a blessing. Evelyn stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. This child who had been born from violence, this child who had been saved by courage, this child who would grow up knowing the truth about where she came from and choosing every day who she wanted to become. That was the real inheritance, not land or money or a dead man's empire, but the freedom to choose, the knowledge that family was built by love, not blood, the understanding that the past could be acknowledged without being allowed to define the future. Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered a promise into the darkness. We are free now, both of us. We are finally free. Outside, the wind moved through the cottonwood trees. The church bell rang once, marking the hour. And in the cemetery at the edge of town, 3 graves rested side by side beneath the stars. Eli Mercer, who had chosen love. Sarah Coulter, who had deserved better. And Rosa Valdez, who had made sure justice was finally served. Their stories were over. But the story of Harrow Springs and of the people who had found their courage in the shadow of tyranny was just beginning. And Evelyn Mercer, widow and mother, and the woman who had brought down a monster with nothing but truth and stubborn refusal to be afraid, would be there to see it unfold. The lockbox was empty, but the future was wide open, and that, she thought as she finally allowed herself to rest, was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The end.